Multiple participants. Let's see what happens if I do this. Oh, that didn't do anything. Okay. Hopefully you all can see each other, and this is just some weird thing that's happening to me.
Yes, it's only happening to you, Ken. Yes.
Right.
Everyone else is normal.
This is because you said I was shy, and now it's like hiding everyone. So I just feel like I'm the only person in the room.
Well,
That's hilarious.
Yes. Well, we won't be acting up too much. Don't worry. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Charlotte.
Wait, is that my Scott?
It is your Scott. Yes.
It's
okay.
It's our Scott.
I'm gonna stop sharing for a second because I do want to say hi to you, Scott. Oh, it's so good to see you. You've settled into New England.
I am, and I hope we can continue this brief chat later. I would have gone to India to see you, Ken. So this is the closest I could do. And Charlotte, you did a bang up job. The last interview I saw, I so enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you for saying. It's really due to everybody in the background making this happen. Like that lady in the upper left-hand corner, she knows what's going on. And the man in the below her in the upper left-hand corner knows what's going on too. So thank you.
Meenakshi is the sun that brings light into the day of this whole process, for me at least. So thank you for all your help and hand-holding.
She's great at hand-holding, as a non-techie speaks. Yeah.
Thank you for all the good words. That keeps my passion going on. So with that, I think we are ready to get started. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining our meeting today. And today we have Kenneth in front of us, and we would like to have our the series of knowing the teacher, and we would like to know a lot about Kenneth today, as much as we would like to speak with us. And we have a Charlotte who will be conducting the interview for us. And Charlotte is not a person who who needs a lot of introduction. On a platform of Ashra Jyotish, she has been a person who is really honoring us with the beautiful interviews so far. So with all of that, I will definitely welcome everybody to be a part of it and enjoy the session. And we are a part of Ashra Jyotish, and the Ashra Jyotish is an organization. I'm very happy to see our presentation also. The technical part has been taken care. So we are sharing our slide over here. So this is the topic of our presentation is like join Charlotte mentioned with the talk with the Kenneth Miller. And with that, I will definitely like to move, and talk about a little bit what Ashra Jyotish is all about. But before we get into, we would like to start with the mantras, and we have our mantra chanting lady there with us. And so pass it on to Rani ji. Rani ji, can you just let us get?
Hello, Kenneth ji. Hello, Charlotte ji. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Raniji. And now we would like to talk a little bit about Ashra Jyotish. And Ashra Jyotish is a non-profit organization, and this is the Ashra Jyotish is now, and we are a part of Ashra Vidya Gurukulam. I'm sorry, there is something.
Oops.
Sorry about that. Yeah, as we talked about yesterday, sometime you get some disturbance from the kids in the background. Yes. Ashra Jyotish is about the non-profit organization. We are very closely associated with the Ashra Vidya Gurukulam. And we are not, I will say, not organization which is not known. We are primarily known for our conference, which is running from last 26 years. So this year, the annual conference will be the 26th year overall. With that, and we started with the Ashra Jyotish, and we have that idea of like not having and meeting people only once in a year, and we have a very full gang of the people meeting every year. So we wanted to have this engagement coming up, especially with the time when the online setting is so well and we can connect ourselves. So to have this year-round engagement, we started with this organization, which is running in an online setting. And during the same time we see the COVID situation, and during this time we see a good participation of the people coming and going back and learning their Vedic astrology. So it works out well for us at this time, so that we can deepen our engagement as well as bring that Vedic astrology to multiple people, and multiple countries are joining. So I am getting to hear from the people from the Russia or coming from the Japan, saying that they could get into the Vedic astrology from here. So anyway, so these are the few things which we are doing. With that, I will definitely like to move on to the next page. And I'm sorry, a little bit of disturbance from our side. So in our AVG, we have this conference where we have a lined up of the speakers there. Look, around 12 speakers, which you can see. Their faces over here is already there. Few of them is speaking for the first time, and within that we have the Kenneth, who is speaking for the first time. We would like to know him obviously a lot today. And few of the speaker which is always been there with us is the Dr. K.S. Charak, Vinay Aditya, VP, even the Simon and the Kamila was also there last year. So few of the names I don't have to introduce as in a Jyotish Mela. They are very known figures. And yes, with that, I would not like to get into a lot of this one. Let's get into the video of it, which will give you a highlight of the Jyotish Mela. So very quickly, we will, just pass through the information. So Saurav, if you are prepared, we will get started with the video of the Jyotish Mela. I'm sorry, this was a little longer video than what I have expected. But I hope you got the sense of the present and the whole conference which is coming up. And now we will move into the interviews. And Saurav, can you share the screen with so that we can get started with the introduction of the Charlotte, and then I will give the opportunity to Charlotte to be able to speak about Kenneth, and we'll get into the interview. Saurav, you have to introduce Charlotte first.
All right, no, thank you. So thanks a lot for the opportunity once again. I think, as you rightly said earlier, Charlotte does not need any introduction really, but it's my pleasure and my gratitude to be able to do that. So Charlotte, thanks a lot for doing this interview with us today. I mean, Charlotte is probably one of the oldest member of the Vedic astrology group here in US. She is also the president of AQUA, which is again one of the foremost organizations in US promoting the Vedic astrology knowledge. She is very involved in supporting the public awareness and usefulness of the authentic astrology. That's something that we find very appealing. One of the key tenets for us has always been the authenticity of the knowledge, and that is something that we find in common between us. So that's something that we really cherish. Charlotte is also a long-time student of celestial art. She has studied in many different places, and like Meenakshi was saying that right now we are seeing a lot of people coming in from different countries and different places who are interested. We are looking at you, Charlotte, to guide us and help us in catering to all of these different backgrounds and people coming in from different countries. Because to be honest with you, that's something which is relatively new for us, and I know Meenakshi has been discussing with you on how to kind of move forward and getting your guidance. The other thing that I would also say, and I think we have said that in past, we are looking at it also as an opportunity to create an amalgamation of Western and Eastern knowledge. And again, the knowledge that Charlotte, you have both on the Western astrology as well as the Vedic astrology is something that we are again looking forward to get a lot of guidance on and leverage your expertise, your knowledge, and the history that you have with these traditions to help us move forward. So as I said, you are guiding light for us. You are someone who we look forward to get a lot of guidance from. And with that, I would hand it back over to you to start with the introduction for Kenneth.
Thank you, Saurav. And now back to you, Charlotte.
Thank you. Wow, that was really impressive. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity and your kindness. And I suppose if you stick around doing something for 50 years or so, you accumulate a little bit of helpful information. So I'm very happy to be here again. Thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you so much for what you're doing to spread the light of Jyotish, especially these days. Gosh, we need this in these unusual times, don't we? So here we are. We're devoting some of our time on a Sunday to see what we can learn from each other and from Kenneth Miller especially. So Kenneth and I have been colleagues for decades. I remember we were together we just happened to be in the same adventure in India in 2002 in Kerala. And when you're in India in a group setting, you get to know a lot about what everybody else knows. So that was very instructive for me. So Kenneth has also been really he's been hard at it he started his studies in astrology in the Western tradition when he was when he was a little tyke, just a youngster. He discovered astrology through his mother, and taught himself how to, as we used to say back in the day, cast charts by hand. And so that's always an interesting exercise. So he started at a very early age. There must be some past life holdover for his interest in astrology. But so again, then leaping forward many decades, I have to say that Kenneth's credentials are substantial and impressive. I told Kenneth on the phone yesterday that I am proud of him, that he took the time to get a proper education and credentials as an astrologer. This is personally my big thing, is to have authentic astrology recognized for the beautiful celestial science that it is, through the agency of people that are properly educated and credentialed. So Kenneth has quite a list of accomplishments. He has credentials from the Council of Vedic Astrology, from ICAS, even the Indian Council of Astrological Sciences. That's something. He took the time and the effort to graduate at level 2 from the American College of Vedic Astrology, and that is no mean feat, I must say. He's educated himself in, so here's the timeline here. So again, it's a good thing, Kenneth, that you started your studies of astrology early, because at an early age, because then he took the time to educate himself in Hellenistic astrology and medieval astrology and Renaissance astrology, as well as Jyotish. So, isn't that quite wonderful? So he's currently, get this, he is the president of Kepler College. Now, again, this is, as I say, no mean feat. I think it's really quite a miracle that we have these astrological educational institutions in modern times. I mean, we're a bit of an anachronism, but the fact that we're putting in our labors of love to keep these colleges going and offering the knowledge is that's one thing to feel good about these days. So he will talk about these sorts of things. I want to say Kenneth will fill in the gaps on what I didn't manage to tell you about his background, but you get the basic idea. He's very well educated and credentialed, and he loves serving the Jyotir Vidya. So with that, I would just like to add, may we speak what is true, may we speak what is beneficial, and may we speak what is timely. So Kenneth, welcome. Thanks for being here with us today.
That introduction was so beautiful and complete. Thank you very much. And I'll see everyone in class in a few weeks. No, I'm kidding.
Oh no, you're not getting off that
I don't know.
easy.
I think I need to pare down my bio, because a lot of that sounds more impressive than it actually is. But I'm just like everyone else, trying to learn more and more astrology and be of service to my clients, and then pass off through teaching what I've learned, to the next generation as best I can. So, but thank you for all that.
Oh gosh, you're welcome. As I said, it takes time to get those credentials, doesn't it?
Yes.
Time and effort and essays and passing exams, it's a very good start in order to be useful in this life. So Kenneth, what would you like to discuss today? Should I just put this on you? Would you like to, just as for starters, do you have any interest in telling us about your research, the results of your research project?
Really, I'm happy to. I've never been spotlighted like this before, so it's a new experience for me. And usually when I introduce myself, it's like a 2-sentence or 1-sentence introduction. So, I'm not sure what people are interested in. I could certainly talk about that. I can talk about my background, although that's, that has been covered. But I will say this before we get into like the rest of the stuff, you know, coming from, because I got interested in astrology in the age before computers, when you're doing manually the calculations, the chart reveals itself one piece at a time. You remember this because this goes back. And often it, like the ascendant would be the very first thing you would calculate. And then I think the sun or the moon, I can't remember, but one by one, you'd figure out where the planet was. And one by one, it would appear in the chart. And I remember the first time I got exposed to computer software, and I thought, oh, this is going to be fantastic because it'll save me so much time. And I'd enter the data and the chart would pop up. I then found my brain kind of short circuiting because I was getting all this information in one go. And I realized that when I was doing it by hand, I was integrating each piece, you know, oh, okay, the moon has this relationship to the sun. Oh, Mercury is configured this way. And oh, like step by step, it was going through the thing. So it was, I'm sure new astrologers don't have that issue because they just grow up with the thing popping up. But I often tell people if the whole chart is overwhelming and you've been studying astrology for a while, just break it down, like, you know, introduce it like piece by piece, because that was how my brain processed it. I mean, I don't know what it was like for you when you were first starting out, but.
Well, yes, it was the same. I calculated charts by hand for 25 years. I got it down to a 4-minute process. But you know, it is a process, isn't it? But even now, looking, I think, Kenneth, you have a full-time practice as a consulting astrologer, so you've got plenty of you've got plenty of working knowledge of this on a contemporary basis. I'm thinking practice makes perfect, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think seeing clients is really how you acid test, which is an American expression, but that's how you really like test, you know, what is working and what isn't. You know, astrology, as much as I like it to be scientific and to follow principles, and I consider myself a kind of rule-driven astrologer, you know, the fact is that our personal astrology interacts with our clients, right? And so we'll get a certain kind of client, or we'll get a rash of a certain similar kind of problem, and then we're able to, you know, what works for the person. You know, I also find that, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, that when you're a consulting astrologer, you need to have you end up using techniques that are fairly rapid to implement, you know, because you only have a certain amount of time with the client and you only have a certain time to prepare. You know, it's one thing when you're starting out and you can spend a week on one chart and doing everything on it. But once you start seeing clients regularly, you kind of have to hone down, you know, what is helpful and what can you do fast, which is, you know, we'll get into it a little bit later, but that's why I chose the topics I chose to teach this time, because, well, Ashtaka Varga is not necessarily quick, but they're you know, fairly easy to implement into an existing, you know, whatever your existing interpretive structure is. But my path through astrology was very, I see Scott's Pluto question, and I will get to that. It would seem weird to jump into that right now, Scott, but that is good. So as the story was told about me, I got interested in astrology very young, and because in America, as in most of the world, little sun sign columns were published in the newspaper, and I remember my mom reading that to me. That's how my mom introduced it. She wasn't an astrologer, but she was, you know, she self-identified as a Scorpio. You know, as you know, in Western astrology, it's very sign driven. Everyone self-identifies as their sun sign typically. And that's what's in the newspaper. And when I was old enough to read, I started like reading that section. And when I was about 13, I was in a magazine. I was in a shop that had a bunch of magazines. There was an astrology magazine. I think it might've been American Astrologer or something like that. And I picked it up and I saw a chart for the first time. And I saw that all the planets were involved. like in the analysis. And I remember a light bulb going off going, of course you would of course you would look at everything, not just the sun. Like, why didn't that occur to me before? And for some reason that lit the fire. And I started like saving up my allowance money and buying astrology books. And that's how I got into astrology. That's how I got into it, you know, and then fell in love with Indian astrology and, you know, pursued that as a career. Right after I got my certification from ACVA, I decided to get a master's degree in the history of astrology. And Kepler College at the time was a degree granting, an approved degree granting institution. And they had this master's degree, which was like the history of astrology East-West. So I thought it was a perfect match for my interests. And that was a great experience, just sort of training me to be a little bit more of a critical thinker and processing, you know, data a certain kind of way. But what I did for my master's thesis was I had noticed that Mars was interpreted very differently East and West. And that got me thinking, the title of my master's thesis was Mars, Passion or Strife, the Confounding Influence of Culture on the Astrologer. Because as I got into Mars and as I got into the history of relationship astrology East-West, I found that they were driven by very different needs. You know, in the West, it's typically the couple who are hiring the astrologer, and it's typically after they've gotten together. Now, America is a serial monogamy culture. So usually the astrologers brought in either I'm dating X amount of people, which one do you think is the best for me? Or I'm in a relationship and we want astrology to help us understand each other better or or overcome problems or whatever it is. That's typically what drives Western relationship astrology. In India, which is still largely a arranged marriage culture, and certainly traditionally was an arranged marriage culture, it's of course the parent who's engaging the astrologer to look at suitable matches for their child, and the astrologer's bringing brought in at the front end, and you're looking for a match that's going to sustain itself, from an American or Western point of view, to meet the person you're going to marry on the day you get married. And of course you do meet beforehand. But in terms of expected to form a substantial amount of intimacy in a short amount of time. Oh yeah. Mental compatibility is going to be real important for that influx. So I noticed that in the West, you typically found Mars looked at as either a part of the sexual chemistry equation, creating some kind of magnetism in the couple. And in the Indian literature, it was often a bad influence, that's going to cause strife. Now I'm painting broad pictures, of course. I don't want, I'm oversimplifying. Are you Nalini's in the audience? Oh, wait, now there's a lot of very prominent astrologers in the audience. It's my nervousness has gone up, but
warned
anyway,
you about that, Ken.
It got me, it got me thinking about how culture influences astrology and the astrologer. In a world where you have to ask people out on dates, and there's a certain amount of bravery you have to have in even engaging that process. Mars takes on a different flavor than in a culture where that's not happening, where parents are arranging the thing. So the whole thing was just sort of a look at the history of relationship astrology East-West, because shockingly, it goes back to the beginning of astrology. You also have people interested in how they can learn more about their relationships. And then how Mars very specifically gets interpreted very differently in 20th century Western astrology versus Indian astrology. If you push the clock back on Western astrology, when a marriage was not, was a more, if it wasn't arranged, it was maybe more of a business transaction or more of a family thing. you then show Mars showing up a lot more malefically, but it undergoes this sort of transformation in the 20th century, just as Western culture became a dating culture. So I just found that interesting, and it got me thinking about, again, the cultural forces and how they impact astrology and the astrologer. And in my own practice, it's made me sensitive, because when I talk to, and I have, like we all do, I have some clients who are foreigners to me, and they grew up in cultures that I'm not necessarily familiar with. I'm very careful when I'm interpreting the chart to say, well, when I see this in an American's chart, it usually manifests this way. You know, it might manifest that way in your, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I try to find out a little about what their cultural norms are. Am I making any sense? I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here.
Yes, you're supposed to. That's we're here to listen to you.
Okay.
To you, Ken, whatever you have to offer.
By the way, if anyone has any questions, please throw them in the chat box, because I like to be interactive. So it's something that normally isn't taught, and we don't normally think about it, because culture is kind of an invisible influence. You know, you are raised in a certain kind of way. The planetary patterns express themselves in a typical kind of way in a certain society. But it helps me that when I am dealing with foreigners, I'm just a little more aware that some of my interpretations may be West centric or American centric, and I need to dial in the cultural influences. There's a very famous Western Hellenistic author, Ptolemy, well known in the West for science and astrology. But he said, and this, there may be an analogy of this in the Indian tradition. I haven't actually looked for it, so I'm not saying someone else didn't say this in the Indian tradition. But Ptolemy says in the beginning of his book on astrology, he says there are really 4 sets of factors that influence a person's destiny. And astrology is one of them, but the other 3 are what he called differences of seed, or what we in modern times would call, say, genetic factors. You know, someone tall is going to have different opportunities than someone short. You know, if you've got a robust genetic makeup versus a weak one, you know, like genetics is going to play a role in that. The second is, where were you born in terms of the culture? Are you in a first world country, a third world country? Were you born into a metropolitan area? Are you in farmland? Like, all that is going to influence your destiny. And then the family you were born in, what kind of a family, what values did they have? What did they teach you? Were they, you know, someone born in a very rich family is going to have a different set of opportunities than someone born in a poor family. And that you need to take all of that in consideration, or your astrology will like go off the rails as you're you know, predicting things and looking at the life. So I felt my work was kind of an extension of that, and just sort of really, well, let's actually look and see, is there an example of a difference? And Mars just jumped out at me as a focal point.
Well, that's fascinating, Ken. Yeah, there's but I think that even using today as a prime example of how we're, you know, becoming more universal, I think, in a certain way, about the application of contemporary astrology. Yes, we the Jyotish Mela is going to do a great job of teaching us the foundational techniques and principles, and then it's up to us to put this into practice, whether we are practicing with clients or just the application of in our own lives currently. And there's always this. I mean, it seems to me that, you know, the irony of you and me speaking together here as 2 Westerners for the ashram is, I mean, I say it cracks me up just simply because I'm an American and I have a Mercury Jupiter conjunction. I get cracked up by a lot of things, but by that I mean I find it amusing, entertaining, and delightful that we're here blending our cultural experiences to come up with a positive result. You know, we're studying astrology so that we can make our individual lives better and the lives of people around us, aren't we? I mean, I think that's a prime motivation, and yes, there you know, there are cultural differences, obviously, of course there are, but then there's also the beauty of looking at planets, I think, is that, as I say to my clients, listen, this situation is occurring naturally in the sky. It's the perfectly natural time for this thing to happen, or this event, whatever
Yeah.
it is. It's not manipulated by the government. This is, this is not fake news. We've got the most objective, macroscopic view of what's going on, because we strive to understand the language of the stars. So it's yes, it's well worth knowing about these things. Of course. So yes, and also one more thing about Mars, which I have found extremely immediately useful in my practice, is that in Jyotish, Mars is a planet of property matters, real estate. And for whatever reason, I have a lot of clients that are, buying or selling or asking questions about real estate. And I immediately go to the position of Mars, and gosh, it works beautifully. Maybe this is not a news flash for people, but it's one more aspect of Mars.
Yeah,
No
so you
pun
just reminded me of something I witnessed quite a while. I can't remember when this was, but there was a small astrology conference in upstate New York. It was on a Buddhist ashram of sorts, a retreat center. And they had two famous Western astrologers. Camilla Sutton was representing Indian astrology, and they had a Tibetan astrologer who had been a former astrologer to the Dalai Lama. And it was like a cross-cultural kind of meeting of the minds. But every evening they would draw a name out of the hat in terms of like someone in the audience's chart. And I was attending as an attendee. I wasn't in the speaker lineup. They'd pull a name out of the hat, and all of them would calculate the chart, and they would just do a cold reading. They would just look at the chart and they would read it. And there was a guy in the audience who had his name pulled, and I forget the configuration, but when Camilla pulled up the Jyotish chart, I was also doing my own analysis, and I was agreeing with her that there's strong real estate tendencies here. The person's like making money from real estate, blah blah blah. Everyone agreed. The Western astrologers, the Tibetan astrologer, they all were like, wow, you've really got real estate and profiting from homes and stuff like that, blah blah blah. And then it was like, okay, so end of the reading. How did we do? The guy stood up and he says, well, I'm a farmer. And I was like, oh, we're in upstate New York. You had 4 astrologers who have city-based practices. Of course, we're going to read things as real estate transactions because we're not used to talking to farmers. But as you say, Mars rules the land. It actually can mean the land. The guy was a successful farmer in upstate New York. We forgot where we were, and that didn't even cross any of our minds that's how it would manifest. So that is a sneaky way where you kind of need to be aware of like where you are and where the person's from, because, as we know, there's many, many, many keywords for the planets, and we tend to like pull the ones that we see a lot in our own little world of clients.
Yes, well, true enough. But farming is a property matter, isn't it?
Yes. No, I mean, no one was wrong, but everyone was thinking in terms of they were framing it as if you'd seen it in a city dweller, not someone, who's actually literally farming the land. But that was a very important lesson to me. And that was probably the first like, oh man, like I need to start thinking wider,
Yes, of course. The context is very important.
I also want to pull out that someone, I believe, threw up a text where it does the same thing Ptolemy did. Desh Kal Patra. I'll have to look that up afterwards, but an astrologer needs to take into account country, time, and culture before making predictions. So yes, we have a source in the Indian tradition for that, but really it's common sense when you think about it.
Sure.
It's important.
Well, I have to say quite honestly that it seems to me that we as practicing astrologers have sort of a discrete clientele. First of all, they have to be, with all due respect, have to be educated enough to understand the value of consulting with an astrologer.
Yep.
And secondly, they have to have the financial means to do the same. So,
yep.
we're going to apply some cultural context from that. But so Ken, would you mind telling us what your I don't know, your favorite tool is, or your go-to tool for your practice, or do you want to talk about the most delightful thing you ever found out about Jyotish, or your favorite nakshatra, or something fun like any of those questions?
All of
Actually,
those fun questions can be answered if I can track them all. I have to say that, so I'd been as you heard in my history, I'd been an amateur Western astrologer. I would occasionally teach a class in a bookstore, and I would occasionally take money for people, often did it for free. And it was an avocation
sure.
since high school. But I kept hearing, and I was always interested in Indian things, Indian culture, mythology, religions of India. You know, that was always an interest. But the fact that the Indians use the sidereal zodiac just seemed crazy to me. I'm like, how can someone be a Taurus moon and an Aries moon at the same time? That doesn't even make sense to me. So I pushed that astrology away for years and years, but I kept hearing how great it was, how good the predictions were. So finally, in, like, I don't know, 1994, 1995, something like that, I was on vacation, and I remembered I was on vacation in a place that had an astrologer who did Vedic astrology, was well known in that. So I thought, you know what, I'll get a reading and see what it's all about. And so I called that person up. They were able to accommodate me on short notice. I went in, and I was so impressed with the astrology reading. I was like, I want to learn this. Like, what can I do? Like, this is like, oh my, I can't believe I've not been paying attention to this. So he's like, hey, you're in luck. We're having our big international conference in San Diego later this year. And it was in like November, December. So I signed up for it. I went to it. It was all, I mean, 90% of it was over my head. I didn't know what was going on, but I had fallen in love, and I bought a bunch of books, and I, got, I think, David Frawley's correspondence course, whatever was available back then. I started doing, and it just lit a fire under me. And just the whole concept, and maybe just the way, I think one of the values of Indian astrology, and why that is what people say, oh, what kind of astrology do you do? I mean, when people pay me money, I'm doing a pretty classic traditional Indian astrology. And the reason for that is I just find a richness and depth. One of the advantages that Indian astrology has over the West is the consistent presence in the culture, and it's also being dialed into the culture and respected, and having a common language of Sanskrit and all the local languages, just to continue down the timeline of text. Whereas if you know the history of the West, you have Hellenistic astrology that's written in Greek, it then gets translated into Persian, it gets translated into Arabic, it gets translated finally into the Latin West, and then local languages. Plus, you have the rise of the Catholic Church kind of not liking horoscopic astrology or natal astrology and saying, we don't really like that. And then science is like, hey, you guys, you're not even like viewing the cosmos right. Therefore, all your astrology's got to be wrong. So there's a very checkered history of astrology kind of waxing and waning. And I feel in the Indian timeline, you just have this like building up of a beautiful tradition. So I know we all know that. That's why we're all here. But I think that's what really tickled my fancy. So maybe that leads into some of my favorite nakshatras. Boy, that's a tough one. There are a lot. There's no bad nakshatra, although we, mythically we know less about some than others. But given what I just said, I do appreciate Magha, because it's the Pitris and the respect to the ancestors, and I think an interest in history is linked to that. But I'd have to say, I like the story of Shravana Nakshatra. I hear myself telling that a lot to clients. I must get a lot of moons and rising signs in that nakshatra. There's a few that are. I mean, the Ashwini story is a fantastic one. The Ashwin twins.
Well,
Yeah.
Ken, I'll be honest with you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot here. I'm just being sort of lighthearted about this. I warned you this would be a lighthearted conversation.
No, this is lighthearted. I didn't feel on the spot. I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't want, if I don't mention someone's nakshatra, I don't want them to feel bad. It's just probably slipping my mind. There are a lot of good ones. And I guess my approach to nakshatra is more understanding the deity associated with it. And obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not answering that question from the point of view of Muhurta, because then we just pick the good Muhurta nakshatras. But just in terms of the deities and the stories associated, that's the beginning way I integrate them into my practice when I'm first doing a reading with someone.
Yes, that's the nature of the deities is really.
But I am
very
a big
instructive.
believer in, and I got this from some of my mentors, one of which is, I think, still in the audience, Gary Gomes. He actually helped me secure the level 2, I believe, under his mentorship. But I'm a big believer in doing more with less,
Yes.
which isn't necessarily popular on the teaching circuit, because especially, I mean, the Indians can tell me if this represents there, but in America and in the West, we're always like, what's the new technique? If I just learn this one new thing, I'll be like the best astrologer ever. And so we're always trying to like dial in the new thing. But I think to be the best astrologer you can be, it's doing more with less. It's getting a more deeper understanding of the basics. And as I mentioned at the beginning, when we first started, there are time constraints. When you're actually a consulting astrologer, if there's a technique that involves a lot of time, I will be less inclined to dial it in just because I don't have the time to do it. It may be the best technique in the world. I'm not saying don't investigate complicated, time draining techniques. In fact, investigate everything. I'm just as much interested in the latest discovery as anyone else. But I find that, rather than say, this is my favorite thing, I find just going deeper with quote unquote the simple things. And thanks to computer software, there are a lot of things that are simple that weren't simple 30, 40 years ago that would have been, even more time intensive.
Yes, thank goodness for that. Well, speaking of non-simple techniques, Kenneth, could you please elucidate a little bit about what you're going to present during the conference? I know that you've taken on the monumental task of presenting us with a survey of Ashtaka Varga, and then you're also going to teach us about the Sudarshan Chakra. So why don't you let us know what we have to look forward to?
So what I like about the Sudarshan Chakra is a couple of things. First of all, I have 3 different English translations of Briyat Parashara Hora Shastra. And all 3 of them, they don't all have the same chapters in them. And those of you in India know that Hindi and other local language versions, there's a lot of diversity in the Parashara Hora Shastra market. But in all 3 of the English translations I have, they do have a chapter on the Sudarshan Chakra. And I think he says, let's just see if I can quote this. At the end of the chapter, like most techniques, he says, like, this is like a great thing that every astrologer should know. You're really not doing great astrology unless you're this technique. And then at the very end, he goes, now, once you've mastered this and Ashtaka Varga, now you can be confident, in predicting stuff for your clients. So when I read that a couple of years ago, I was like, wait a minute, why have I never paid attention to this chapter before? It turns out to be, despite the native English speaker, it's a mouthful, but we know chakra just means wheel. And it is actually, I will argue and I will present a very simple technique that you can really do in your head. Even if you don't have software and you just have the chart in front of you, you can do this technique and this timing method, and it will highlight things that will hopefully be of use to you and your client. And then I thought, when I was asked, like, do you want to do a second topic? I thought, well, since the chapter itself says, combine this with Ashtaka Varga, I would do in the hour and a half. That's, that is a big topic. And I know there are astrologers here that have written books and done, did I see Vinay's here? But, I know it's a big thing, but if I'm good at anything at a teacher, it's kind of boiling things down. And so I will give you hopefully enough, even if you've never been exposed to it, or if you have, but you haven't quite dialed it in, I will hopefully give you enough that then you can incorporate it into the Sudarshan chakra and then help your astrology. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's really, does it work on the charts of the people that are coming to see you? Is it helpful? Is it a helpful technique? So so that's why I chose those two things. I thought it would be fun to do. I thought it'd be challenging to do. I know people do teach these things, and I know people are teaching the Sudarshan chakra, but I hadn't seen it done, and I just thought I would try to bring my skills as a teacher to that and present it, because I do like how it's just something you really literally can do in your head. And another thing I like about it is the concept is also present in early Hellenistic astrology. So I haven't done an analysis how far back this goes in our tradition, but I feel like it goes way, 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 way back, because it's popping up in the West early on. And it's just like I say, it's fun. It's easy to integrate what you already know about astrology into this technique.
Fun and easy. Doesn't sound like there's a downside to those classes. Although I will admit, I've never heard those two words, fun and easy, attached to the concept of Ashtaka Varga ever. So this is a first. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So well, Ken, you've given us a really brilliant survey of who you are and what you bring to the faculty. And I think that our viewers and listeners have the sense that you're in the trenches, frontline, contemporary Western Jyotishi who's has a broad background in both many different Western traditions of astrology and Jyotish. So I think that we'll have the classes will really provide value. And so I think
my hope and my intention.
Yes, providing value. That's the idea. So I'm monitoring the chat bar here. I think Ronnie G has reminded us to please register as soon as you can. And but before we wind up our presentation here, if someone has a question, this is the time to ask it.
Yeah, while we're waiting, I'm just seeing, let's see, I think this is Scott, cultural nodes, Western. Let me just see. Okay, yeah, that is a great question, but I feel like we would segue into a lecture that maybe not everyone would be interested in. But yeah, another point of if you have been exposed to Western astrology and you start studying Indian, or you're in Indian astrology and you start looking at Western, there are overlaps. You'll look at the meanings of planets and they're not completely different from each other. There are some significant differences, I would say, but there's overlap, because we were talking to each other, at the dawn of, at the beginning, East and West, they were talking to each other. It wasn't it wasn't a contest of who invented what first and whatever. It was like, ooh, you have knowledge, let's share it. And the Greek speaking people were interested in astrology. Indians were interested. Everyone was interested in astrology, and there was trade going on. And black pepper was going from South India all the way up, way deep into Mesopotamia. So we know there were like trades and talks all along. Wait, where was I going with? I was going to make a point about that.
You were going to talk about
the nodes. Okay, yeah, going back to the nodes. So the nodes are very different, East and West, and I think that's because in the West the nodes have been kind of this. I don't want to say, the born out of wedlock child that we don't want to pay attention to or acknowledge. That might be a little harsh, but really there's so many different interpretations in the West because so much new, people are just like, oh, I think this is my take on the nodes in the West. And
Yeah.
That's another great thing is you have this rich nodal tradition that makes a lot of sense and it's really just dialed into the chart deeply. So I'll just say, yes, there are big differences east and west in the nodes. And I think James Braha in one of his books says, and they're both of value, but use the Western nodes with the tropical zodiac and use the Indian nodes with the sidereal zodiac, or you'll go off the rails if you try to mix it all up.
Yes, don't mix systems.
Okay, so someone's asking me some of the techniques I use in analyzing a horoscopic chart. So this is going to be a real bread and butter answer, but when someone first comes to me, now it depends on the question. So my process is I've had a little chat with the client before we meet, either through email or we've actually very briefly talked on the phone or something like that. And I've ascertained why they are seeking out an astrologer, why they're seeking out me, what they want to know. So what I do is very client focused. I find out what they want me to focus on. But generally speaking, when someone comes to me for the first time, I think what everyone does, I just do a detailed analysis of the natal chart. I don't spend a lot of time, a lot of Western astrologers will spend a lot of time on like personality stuff. I figure by the time someone's coming to see me, they know who they are. What they want to know is what's happening in life, how do they navigate that? So that is kind of my approach. Now I occasionally get people who, because I do live in the West, I do get clients who are like, I don't know who I am or where I'm going. Then I will dive into that topic. But if they don't ask that question, I'll just say a couple of things about them that the chart tells me just so that they know. They say I don't know where I learned this from, but they say an astrologer's reputation is made by predicting the past. In other words, if you say something to the client about their past that's true that you don't know about, then they're more likely to have confidence in what you're saying about tomorrow and the future. So I'll do a little bit of that. But the techniques I'm using are Vimshrotri Dasha, Gochara. I'm looking at transits. I'm doing what I'm teaching. I'll use the Sudarshan Chakra and related techniques. I will use other dashas depending on what strikes me. Now, this is another thing that I teach my students. There are so many techniques and so many things to do that I'll often let my intuition guide me. So if I'm looking at a chart and Yogini Dasha pops into my mind, I'll take that as a sign that, oh, maybe I should look at the Yogini Dasha, like maybe that is going to speak to this particular situation and the concerns they have. So so it's not like I only do Vimshrotri. I will do other things.
That's interesting.
And I call it sort of, I call it intellectual intuition. In other words, I'm looking at a chart, and if I see a combination, I'm like, wait, I think there's a yoga about that. I can't quite remember what it is. I'll then look up the yoga. I mean, the fact that that's even coming in my mind is telling me it's important for this person. So sometimes a technique will just pop up as I'm going through the chart.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, I don't know if you maybe have a more specific question than that. I mean, I will do Varshafal on returning clients. Depending on the questions they ask, I might do different techniques that are more suited to that. For example, because I do what I consider a kind of classic traditional Jyotish, I don't put the outer planets in the chart. However, if a client calls me up and they're worried about Pluto or they're worried about Uranus, or some Western astrologer told them that their life's about to fall apart because of Neptune, I will put those in the chart, and I can dial that in and figure out what's going on and give them a way to navigate it. But that is something, that's something I only do if they ask or they bring that to the table.
That's interesting too.
Yeah.
Considering your Western background.
Yeah.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, Kenneth. I think that I realize that, that the last question that we received from Rajiv Chanji I mean, that could have been the beginning of a conversation, which could have lasted for an hour. But
I mean, that could have been
I-
there could be a whole, actually, that would be an interesting series of just asking professional astrologers, what do you do? And like throw up a chart and walk through the, you know, I'd attend that, you know, that would be an interesting,
well,
maybe I'll
that
do that. Maybe I'll
that
have a
Kenneth,
series. Yes.
Kenneth, if you want to sign up for my webinar on doing it on the live a live consultation, and just see how
Yeah.
at least one person does it in a contemporary setting. So
I'll say this to everyone: sign up for that Charlotte's doing, because you learn more. I learned a long time ago that astrologers will write books and they'll tell you how to read a chart. That isn't always what they actually do when they're reading a chart. And over the years, I've had the privilege of listening to some prominent astrologers give readings, and it's very informative to see what they actually do and the
yes.
order in which they approach the material. And anyone that does that. So thank you for bringing that to the table, Charlotte. I will sign up for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've been in my classes before to heckle me, but so I'll be happy to be happy to see you. But
I'm quiet. I sit in the back. I'm very quiet.
So yes, you've given us a lot to think about, and then during your classes, which will, I mean, that they've been presented, we'll all know what dates they are.
Actually, I'll just share my screen, because I've got,
okay.
you know, if you've been like, you know, astrology is a very personal study, because our own individual astrology interacts with the teachers we find. So some people are going to like my style, some people aren't. And hopefully over the course of this session, you've gotten a feel for whether I'm someone you want to learn from or not. So if that is the case, here's the information. Sunday, September 20th, 12 noon Eastern time. Will be the Sudarshan Chakra. And then the following Sunday, also at 12 noon Eastern, is the survey of Ashtaka Varga. But remember, I'm really bringing this in to help with the first topic, although you don't need, they are standalone talks, but this is framed as, what can I give you that's going to be helpful in an hour and a half? It sounds like an impossible task, I know. What can I give you in an hour and a half that will help, you know, light up this particular chakra a little bit more? So that's how they're connected to each other, but they are standalone. If you're just wanting a survey, I will hopefully also deliver that. Someone wants to, okay, someone put up, Charlotte, if you look in the chat box, you'll see Charlotte's live chart reading, which I'm going to make a note of right now. September 6th at 12 p.m. That's 12 p.m. Eastern time, I assume.
Yeah, I think
okay.
I think all times are expressed in Eastern time. So, well, this is going to be, you know, this conference is being presented, in September of 2020, or the late summer, September, early fall of 2020. You know, there's at one point in mid-September, there are 7 out of 9 planets in their dignities. And I think that this Jyotish Mela is a very good, I mean, it's wonderfully coincidental that this is being held when we have the possibility of making the very best use of these planetary placements. I think possibly we all know that there haven't been 7 out of 9 planets in their dignity for hundreds and hundreds of years. And again, these will not reform in the future for hundreds and hundreds of years as well. So this is a significant time. This knowledge is important. And I think if it's okay with you, Mr. Miller, if we turn the proceedings over to Rani G, that she'll be able to sum up, and we're directed to the registration page. And Kenneth G, thank you for being with us. Thank you for the time that you've spent to give us some insights on to your background and your process and who you are as an exponent of Jyotish.
I want to thank everyone who took time out of their day to listen to this, and I hope it was interesting / entertaining, and I hope I didn't let down my teachers, my past teachers here. I hope, you know, my shortcomings are not a reflection on some of the great people that have taught me in the past, like Gary Gomes, Dr. Chark. I see Nalini in here, and maybe some names I don't see in my quick scanning. But
Well, no worries about that, Kenneth. You did a beautiful job. Of course, you know, Jyotish is so brilliant that anything that you offer is helpful, I believe. So thank you very much. So Ronnie G,
Yeah, thank you so much, Kenneth G, for such a inspiring talk. And Charlotte G, thank you so much for leading this conversation so interestingly. I look forward to the Mela, and I'm sure everyone who is here is interested in the depth and breadth of Jyotish, and the Jyotish Mela offers so much. So please register. And I think Meenakshi was telling me the early bird rates are still there for some more time, probably 3-4 days more or something. So please go ahead and make use of the early bird offer. That'll be great. And I can't wait to hear all of you teaching us during the Mela. And thank you so much. I think you've seen the comments in the chat, so I won't go over it. All the so I just won't go over all that. So I can. So shall I end with the prayer now, or?
Yes, please.
Good. Okay.
I think so.
Thank you very much again, Charlotte. Wonderful.
Thank you. No, it's been a joy. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to see the range of information you have that you can share with us. And Charlotte, I look forward to the live reading. That's going to be wonderful too. And everybody, please sign up for that as well. Thank you.
Okay. So.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Okay, until the next time. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Stay well. You're welcome, Rajiv.
Thank you, Kenneth and Charlotte and everyone. Good job. It was so much fun.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's nice having you.
Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Kenneth. I also popped in to make sure that I'm thanking you guys for such a wonderful interview. I did go to the other meeting and then I came back to here.
Well, congratulations again. Congratulations. Gary G. Hello.
Thank you.
Hello, Gary G. Hello, Karen.
There's a question in the chat. Is there a location in America where you can learn Vedic astrology? Would you both like to answer that?
Charlotte can talk about the American College of Vedic Astrology. Has a real comprehensive program. At Kepler College, I have initiated, introductory trainings, but Charlotte, you talk about ACVA.
Well, I'm wondering if this person is wondering about an actual brick and mortar location.
Oh.
I'm not sure about that, but we live in such a wonderful world that you can get a world-class education online. I mean, yes, come to the Jyotish Mela. This is where you can learn Vedic astrology. You can learn Vedic astrology from the American College of Vedic Astrology, www.acvaonline.org. Check us out that way. Again, we live in a strange world, but it's a beautiful world where we have access to this divine science. So, yeah, I would say, first of all, sign up here with the Jyotish Mela, and then come over to ACVA, get your certification, and have a fulfilling career as a practicing Jyotishi. It's possible. You would have great teachers like Gary Gomes, who's also online with us here. So,
if it's a brick and mortar, I'm not aware of any current brick and mortar situation where there's actually a physical school. The options are all online, as far as I know.
Yeah, Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, I am Rakesh Sharma. We teach in brick and mortar place. We have a regular classroom and we have been teaching there for last 26 years. So,
Nice.
yeah,
Okay,
so we have done over 100 conferences there, brick and mortar. Yeah,
all right. Well,
yeah,
that's,
about 80 astrologers from all over the world have come there,
well,
including Gary Gomes, including Gary Gomes.
yes. And I did also want to offer that even though the Sedona Vedic Astrology Conference, which takes place in the fall every year in Sedona, Arizona, I mean, we usually meet in person, but this year it's also online. Again, it increases the options, and then we have Zoom, and we can see each other's faces and expressions, and so that's what I
Yeah,
want to
closer
offer.
up than normal even, you know. I'm usually in the back of all these classes, so it's a treat to see like a close-up face.
So, well, so thank you for the last holdouts here.
Yeah.
But
So
I
now that we're
guess
just down to a few, let me drop the biggest Jodis secret. No, I'm kidding.
so you'll do that during the class.
I'll do that during the classes. Yes.
Please do that during the class. So,
Yeah.
so Meenakshi, again, I want to personally thank you because I know how much effort this is a full-time job for you working on this and everything else. So
No,
everything else to
Thank
do.
you, Charlotte, for doing all of this.
Good.
So I will definitely would like to be like here at the last moment, and I will let everybody know that can definitely sign up for the Jyotish Mela from our side. Do visit jyotish.com, and if you have any question, do just send an email to me on the ms at jyotish.com.
Yeah.
And one thing I would definitely want to mention is like obviously there is a price to the conference, but if you are having any financial difficulty or if you are senior, definitely reach out to us, and we will see what best we can do to accommodate you for the conference.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so definitely please reach out, and we don't want the financial barrier to be a part of this beautiful teaching, and there's a whole thing which is coming and so beautifully, and so beautiful speakers, and as we know, Vedic astrology is about driving people in a direction of the spirituality, which is a bigger cause than what the conference is all about. So please do sign up, and do let me know if there is something else is coming in your way. So with that, yeah, I will definitely like to say thanks, Kenneth, thanks, Charlotte, and obviously thanks to Rakesh for being able to help us organize and be able to lay down for years to come. So thanks everybody for joining and showing all of this, and that keeps me motivated and passionate about what we're doing here.
All right, dear. Well, we'll see you next time then.
See you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Kenneth.
Bye.